Welcome to SBA 1.0 Coleman webinar, how to use the new SBA 7A online platform to streamline processing and reduce cost. We'd like to start every Coleman webinar with a newsmaker. Make sure all the technical glitches work out. You're on the right day and the right webinar today. We're pleased to have Amy Feldman, a financial journalist with the Small Business Finance column at Forbes. Amy, your specialty is alternative lending for Main Street. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Alternative lending, the reason why it's important to this crowd of SBA lenders is their borrowers are accessing these alternative loans. Is that a good thing?
I think for small businesses it is overall a good thing because that means that there's more capital. There's not been, for a lot of small businesses, it's been hard to get loans, especially small loans, $100,000, $200,000, especially since the 2008 crash. And so it's overall a good thing. The problem has been that not all loans are created equal. Yes. And borrowers who should be getting SBA financing are sometimes getting far worse products that are really problematic for them.
We have SBA lenders on the line. Give me an alternative lending 101. What do SBA lenders need to know about this new product that has been exploding since 2008?
I think, from the small business perspective, I think a lot of small businesses need to know that they can get SBA loans and that anything that SBA can do to make it easier for small businesses, especially small businesses that need small amounts of money, to get SBA loans if they qualify for it will be really helpful.
And the alternative lending, what do I need to know about alternative lenders as an SBA lender? What is it that I absolutely need to know about this product?
I think about it more from the perspective of the borrowers than from the lenders. But from a borrower's perspective, it's really, there's so many different types of funding that make up alternative lending. I mean, as you know, there's term loans, there's loans that, are really SBA loans but being offered online. And then there's merchant cash advance and things that look a lot more like payday loans that are very expensive.
Yeah. The classic is a friend of mine, he owns a restaurant, doesn't have a lot of capacity, a lot of capital behind him. His refrigerator went out. He needed $10,000 the next day to repair it, to replace it, or he was out of business. And that's a classic case of why these alternative loans make sense. He pledged his future credit card receivables, paid it off in 9 months, and we calculated the math. He was paying 50% APR on that loan. He didn't know how much he was paying.
Exactly, and I think that's the problem is most of the small businesses, they have no idea what their effective APR is when they sign up for these loans.
Yeah, but do you see competition in this niche? Do you see those rates starting to come down? It seems like every other week a new player is in the market. There's a new Series B funding announcement. What do you see competition driving rates down for Main Street?
I think it depends on the type of loan that people are offered. I think for businesses that are very savvy about shopping in this marketplace, which is probably the minority of them, they may get a decent loan because rates are low and there are viable alternative loans. There are also loans, as you're saying, that are 50%, 80%, and more that are just crazy.
That was sure nice of On Deck Capital when they went public saying, yeah, you know what, we promise we won't charge anything over 99% in the future. So I guess. Speed to market. What I hear is Main Street is willing to pay a higher rate for speed to market to get that money in their checking account tomorrow. SBA lenders, we try to do our best, but we just can't do a 24-hour turnaround. Do you see that from your perch?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of small businesses, they don't have CFOs on board, they don't have finance guys on board, and so they get into the position you were talking about with your restaurant guy. They need money, they need it now, they need it tomorrow. They don't have the time and the capacity to go through a really substantive multi-week process to get funding. They need it.
We're talking with Amy Feldman, a columnist for Forbes. Her new beat is alternative lending, small business finance for Main Street. We'll talk to her until the top of the hour. You mentioned something, and that's been very critical. How bad is this reputation? Payday loans for small business. we read about they get into cycles and they can't get out of it, and all they're doing is prolonging the inevitable and dragging their employees and their customers down with them.
I think that is what happens in the worst case scenario because, if you're borrowing at a rate of, let's say, 10% a month, how many small businesses are making more than that? So then they're paying back more than they're bringing in. At that point, it doesn't make sense. So then they end up, borrowing additional funds to pay back the first funds and borrowing additional funds to pay back the second funds. And what you're talking about, you can end up in this death spiral.
Yeah. It's interesting. Today's webinar, SBA 1, is out of the need for SBA to be relevant, and the people at SBA clearly understand these interest rates can be predatory, and they want to be able to provide Main Street with an alternative. And what we're going to be talking about is speed to market, make it easier for the lender, and make it easier for the borrower.
I think that would obviously be great.
Good question, Bob. Yes.
Yeah. The faster and easier SBA loans can become, the better it is for borrowers.
You talk to these alternative lenders, and there is a disdain for the traditional brick-and-mortar lenders. They think they're slow. But the brick-and-mortar lenders I talk to and the SBA bureaucrats I talk to, they certainly understand what the alternative lenders are doing, and they are creating products, I don't want to say to compete, but to provide a reasonable alternative for these very high-priced loans.
An alternative to the alternative, as it were.
So what are you covering? What's on your plate, Amy?
Well, I'm sort of, I'm as I said, getting immersed in this industry. I started the column for Forbes just in August, so I'm getting up to speed, learning, talking to everyone, and I hope that you'll all keep reading as I keep writing.
Well, I love your work. You're very insightful. It's very nice to see a fresh perspective on this industry, and you're fair. You're fair, and that's as a journalist, that's good for you.
Thanks, Bob. Really appreciate it.
Amy Feldman, a journalist, columnist on her small business finance column at Forbes. Check it out. She does very wonderful work. Amy, I really appreciate talking to you, and I hope I get to meet you in person soon.
Likewise, and thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.